experience? No, nothing. Not even dreams.
He's after us in our dreams.
Dreams aren't real. You know, dreams can't hurt you.
They're just dreams.
Sweet dream. No bad dreams about Aunt Maggie?
But my dreams aren't like yours.
That's why they're called dreams.
Dreams are not real. She lives in my dreams.
Sweet dreams, my angel.
In my dreams, I love you.
From my dreams. So beautiful.
Howdy folks, welcome to another episode of Screen Dreams. I'm your host Cyrus Haley, and with me as always is my co-host and good friend Daniel Ferguson. How's it going, Dan?
Yeah, very well. Yep. How you doing, mate?
Not doing too badly. I literally have just finished watching Rublev, maybe about 5-10 minutes ago.
Oh, so that's so fresh.
So that's the film. That's the film we're talking about today. Is Andrei Tarkovsky's 1966 film Andrei Rublev. Here is a clip. And we're back from that fantastic Russian clip. So Rublev was your choice, Dan. Why did you pick Rublev so early in the game? I respect it, but explain yourself, sir.
I don't know. I think for a start, great film. I think there's a lot to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of mystery there, and there's a lot of. It's a great doorway in just to talking about Tarkovsky in general as well, which I'm kind of hoping we kind of get to, because I think in this film he really starts to kind of establish his voice. I mean, it's his second film.
Yeah,
it's outrageously ambitious for a second film.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
He wanted to do it bigger. They had, but so the He was confined by budgetary concerns.
I mean, it doesn't look like it. I have to be honest.
But I know for a fact that it was. There was some films that some scenes couldn't be done because the studio couldn't afford it. I just think it's a great it's a great film that talks about art and the artist's journey. So maybe we could kind of sort of go on a bit of a segue in that direction as well.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably the most the thing that kind of hit me most. This was my second viewing. To be honest, the first time when I really first got into Tarkovsky, it was like, all right, better watch all his movies. The only film I haven't seen of his is the one I've got on Blu-ray, The Sacrifice, which I still just, I don't know. Once I do that, the door closes in a weird way. But then obviously you can just rewatch them endlessly.
Yeah, there is so much rewatch value in everything that he does. I mean, that's
most
like,
of this I didn't remember, to be honest. I mean, most of Rublev, what I remembered, and I think, for me, what you remember from a film, for me, has become kind of my barometer, because I know I have good memory. If I don't, what I remember tends to be, that's what affects me most. And what I remembered from my first viewing of Rublev was basically three bits: the dude in the hot air balloon, the making of the bell, and the color reveal of the Saints. All which, I mean, that fucking color reveal of the Saints is one of the all-time.
It's such a great way to. It's such a great way to end the film as well, because it's all obviously that's the whole film has been in black and white up until that point, and it's quite a great way of describing somebody finding their voice or something like that.
Yeah, the light.
Yeah, it's funny because it feels like the first Tarkovsky film. I'm not even Ivan's Childhood is a great film in its own right, but it feels like all the sort of motifs, all the symbols get established in this film that then sort of echo throughout
totally.
the
Evan's childhood
relative-
feels like it wants to be a film, you know, like a film, like a conventional film. It's like, okay, I mean, I just said Evan's, like I think, I mean, I usually say Ivan's childhood, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's copying. It's like, well, it's kind of a normal film, especially by
Yeah.
Tarkovsky standards. Whereas
Yeah.
this one is just like, okay, I mean, you know, fuck you. You know, if you're with me, you're with me. If you're not, you're not.
Yeah. I mean,
It's like formless, shapeless. You know.
yeah.
I mean, it
yeah.
obviously has a structure, but and we can talk. I actually think a nice thing to talk about. Obviously, okay. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about like fear and faith and like talent in quotes and like God blessed talent. I mean, these are the real, for me, the main things. But also, I think just the episodic nature of it is rather interesting. It gives it a kind of biblical feel. Like watching it, it's like, I don't want to say it feels like a Bible of movies, because it's not like this is like a, you know, something that other filmmakers would follow. Although I did see lots of influence, like you know, the witch scene very reminded me a lot of the when they run down to the river in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," and actually there's the fire sequence in Roma in the forest, when, you know, when the witches, what are they called? It's like the witches' Sabbath scene. That definitely has inspired a lot of scenes. But it's kind of basically what I'm saying. It feels mythological, like it's beyond epic. It feels like a folk like it's and the episodic nature helps that greatly, I think.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, it is could be like a parable from like the Bible or something like that. All the characters, well, Andrei Rublev especially, he's obviously a monk and he's following those teachings and he's trying to act in that way. So that kind of that makes sense. I think yeah.
And the way he kind of floats as well. Like he's not necessarily the key of every scene.
Yeah, especially
he's just floating
towards
around.
later. He kind of I don't know. I just how he sort of for like a chunk of the movie becomes like this peripheral figure almost. I think is just masterful, because you still feel like you're looking at the world through his eyes still a bit. But yeah, no, I think all of those points are valid, and I think it's such a clever choice for a second film, because obviously, you know, he wants to do something ambitious, and he wants to bring this world alive. Russia in medieval times. I think a lot of what he says, what they're trying to do is to bring that world, make it feel real, which I think the film definitely
really does.
The film definitely does. Like,
really well.
And that's a great kind of pitch as well to I think at the time as well, it was all very I think everything that kind of got the go ahead in Russia sort of had to have a sort of a patriotic, kind of a nationalism to it.
I did kind of feel that a little bit more this time watching it. I was like, oh, right, because I was thinking, how the fuck has Tarkovsky pulled? How has this been done?
I mean, pitched it as
feels mystical, but he's pitched it. Yeah, he's pitched it as a kind of, look, this is our history. This is a Russian history. It's almost like a historical, like a documentary. I mean, it's not, but I'm sure that's kind of how he would have tried to get it made.
Yeah, and I would
imagine,
and I'm sure the same applies. I mean, I think he's followed tack in, with going from his first film as well. He's gonna make a war film through the eyes of a child, a Russian child.
Yeah,
it does have that kind of same, almost kind of patriotic nationalist, kind of thing to it. So yeah, I think he's kind of followed that, but then but what he's done, he has used that opportunity to then do something else as well entirely. And there's things in this film that just is breathtaking, and I think the greatest, probably my favorite thing, and what I got from it watching it this time around was like horses.
Yeah.
horses play a part in
Yep.
this film, and what they symbolize is
Well,
amazing.
the final shot of this is the horses in
The
rain.
final shot, yeah, but but actually, if you look for it, there's so much sort of references to horses throughout the entire film, and which you then kind of, well, for example, I'll give you a few examples. When the hot air balloon scene at the beginning, which is a great way to start a film.
Rogue as fuck, I have to say.
But did you notice, like, when he crashes, it jumps to a clip of a horse
Falling.
Well, no, I think the horse is already on the ground, and it's sort of getting up, as if to say, like,
Oh, okay.
and that's and maybe we can start thinking of, yeah, and when the cathedral, everyone's dead in the cathedral, and he's sort of having his vision of talking to his mentor, a horse just sort of roams in. That's beautiful shot where they're raiding the city, and the prince who sort of betrayed his own people.
Yeah.
He's being being asked if he regrets it and if he feels sad, and then the camera just pans to the right or whatever, and just looks at this horse's face.
I remember, that moment actually stuck. Yeah, that actually stuck out to me this time. It just pans over to this horse and it's like, yeah, what do you think of this? And the horse just kind of blinks, and then we have a little moment there.
Yeah.
So what does that? I mean, without having to put too fine a point on it, what does that kind of make you feel?
I think a lot of the key of this film is is obviously the beginning scene with the balloon.
Okay.
Because it's an introduction to, you know what I mean? It's a pretty bold introduction to the film.
Yes.
And I think how when he crashes and it pans to the horse, and the fact that the ending scene is on the horses, I think there's something big going on with horses here.
You know what? You're absolutely right.
Symbolic kind of subtext or something. Like, there's an undercurrent. So right, this is what Tarkovsky says about. Right, I'll just read you this, and then we're trying to think how horses might be kind of carrying on this kind of theme or symbol perhaps throughout.
Okay.
So this is a quote from Andrei Tarkovsky.
Okay.
Whether one wishes to fly before it has become possible, or cast a bell without having learned how to do it,
you dirty.
or paint an icon, all these acts demand that for the price of his creation, man should die, dissolve himself in his work, give himself entirely. That is the meaning of the prologue. The man flew, and for that he sacrificed his life.
Bloody hell.
So I think, this whole kind of, I think the horse, I don't know. I mean, this is just my theory, but the horses, they're always kind of symbolizing this, act of somebody following their sort of creative path or somehow or something. I'm not
right.
Do you know what I mean? They're kind of like that driving force, that symbol that is always there. That is,
horses
perhaps indicating of this path or something. I'm not. You know what I mean? I'm something along those lines. I don't know if you kind of see where I'm coming from.
Well, I mean, a horse. I mean, yeah, I do kind of see what you're saying, but horses have been used a lot in movies, right? And they tend. I mean, obviously, westerns. Yeah, and they tend to be because like a horse basically serves man, right? And especially back in Andrei Rublev, when Andrei Rublev is set, it's like it's inextricable from society. I mean, from daily work life. I mean, you have horses. They're just part of our without them, our development would have been impossible. I mean, the plowing fields and all sorts of stuff that we need horses for. But they're they are wild. and they kind of serve us.
Mhm.
You know,
I
and
think
there's a lie that I kind of feel that is I mean, I don't know. I don't know much about horses. I've worked on a horse ranch, but I don't know. I mean, I didn't really get to know the horses. I hung out with them, but who knows? But I think there's a lie that horses enjoy enjoy it. Like being subservient
which
to
I would.
men.
I could no. I would not. I wouldn't agree with that. And
Mm.
I think in Tarkovsky's cinematic language, which he builds, and horses start appearing. I mean, even in the next film in Solaris, in like pretty soon into the film, there's another horse that pops up where it's the children who are like scared of the horse in the
Yeah.
barn, and there's this amazing shot of like this horse in this kind of dark barn that's and I don't know, it just it's a very it's a very specific depiction of a horse. And I don't know if there's a Nietzschean reference there, because there's the famous story of Nietzsche, sort of before he becomes basically a total recluse and shuts himself off from society altogether. Apparently, the last times he was seen in public was he sees like this horse dragging
Or a plow.
serving man,
Yeah.
just dragging somebody, and he kind of just like goes to this horse and starts crying. And
Yeah,
as if to
okay,
say,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
as if just
I
like
like that.
and I'm much more, I'll bet my bottom dollar that Tarkovsky's thinking of horses more in that way, where they're kind of like these passive onlookers to just like this absolute carnage. But then I can't help but also feel like they're also they're included in some other way, some kind of mysterious language that he's using them as to indicate like a sort of a truer path, or when something's, I don't know, when something important is happening in this film, there always just seems to be a horse there.
Now that you've said it, I'm just scrolling through my head of all the horses. I mean, there's horses all over his work, all over the place.
Yeah,
is there not a horse? I know there's a dog in the vision the guy has of Mother Russia in Nostalgia. That, where the final shot of Nostalgia, where it zooms out on his farmland and it's encapsulated within the ruins of the church. Is there not a horse in the background there as well?
No, I don't think there is.
No? Okay, I thought there might have been. I know there's that black dog.
Well, I'll tell you where there's a horse. So when Tarkovsky's doing that interview and he's talking about how like advice to young people, etc., there's a horse appears in that.
Nice.
So I think he just starts filming a horse or something. I'm not sure, but there's I mean, maybe you could find some more examples and stuff, but I just think this is obviously, Tarkovsky really gets more into this language of cinema. I mean, it doesn't matter what the horse means.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that it somehow serves this mysterious cinematic purpose in this film that kind of creates this sense of it just kind of makes sense. I don't really feel like I need to know why.
Put too many words on it.
But it is kind of fascinating how because a horse, I mean, once you start trying to, because it's a very quite a universal symbol as well, I find.
The traditional symbol of the horse. I think it's very possible that Tarkovsky you might be right. It might actually be the complete opposite of what horses usually were used for, which were like, friend of man, servant of man.
Yeah.
Like he's like, no. I mean, there's the scene where the horse falls down the stairs. Pretty bad. It's pretty tough to watch. Like,
yeah.
it's like slipping and it fucking falls off, and it's like that you can't. That doesn't fly now. I mean, I mean, he's killing birds left and right in this. I love he's shameless in the fact that he's just like, throw more birds in front of the lens. Because right now we need some birds to fly out front of the lens.
Yeah.
Fucking love it. You know that those birds are being held by the neck by some Russian wrangler. And he's like, Pripyat! And they just like throw the bird. I mean, this is just such a tangent, but the scenes in Mirror where there's like wind goes across the fields. He had chartered a helicopter for that, and like the helicopter would have to do like passes and it would take like 45 minutes to do a round trip to like go over the top and get the wind to blow. I mean,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's fucked. It's fucked up. But the wind, you look at that shot and you're like, how has he choreographed the wind?
Yeah,
like,
I know.
It's like, is he Christ himself?
A helicopter, yeah.
Yeah, he could just go action wind. It's like, no, there's a heli there. Yeah. So his commitment cannot be overstated, and this really feels.
You haven't seen Sacrifice yet, and
no,
and there's. I mean, well, we've seen, we both know Stalker. I mean, that film was shot 3 different times.
Yes.
With 3 different cinematographers, and obviously I think they used bits from three different ones, but to get. I mean, I think the first time they thought, it's all gone really well. They got the film back and it was all kind of blue.
Yeah,
like, there's this blue tint
incorrectly
on everything.
exposed. Yeah.
And then I think the second time he just fell out with the guy who was supposed to be doing it. So the third time lucky. And then obviously, and then we know what. And then obviously, there's all the things that happened afterwards.
Well, they all died of radioactive poisoning, allegedly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, his commitment has never been in question, I don't think.
Yeah. I would actually say it's questionable how committed he. I mean, it's almost too much. Like, there is an element of me where it's like, with Tarkovsky, he's so uncompromising. So like, listen, art's the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Fuck you. Like you either do it or you don't. But like, don't come to me.
Yeah,
and it's like, it's a little bit, I don't know, it's a bit intense. Like, I'm almost a bit afraid of that. It reminds me of Townes Van Zandt, where he's like, you want to do this, you got to throw everything in the wind. You got to walk.
Yeah.
You got to walk that road. You got to throw it in the wind, man.
Yeah, but
and it's like, Jesus. It's a bit scary.
But that is, going back to this quote, that is the meaning of the prologue. The man flew, and for that he sacrificed his life.
Yeah, you're right. There you go.
And he's already at this stage. He's already, I think, he's maybe kind of, he's making an artistic statement about an artist, but it's how he wants. I think it's even at this stage he's kind of thinking this is where I'm going. I'm already on. I'm already on this path myself, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And the film maybe also stands as a symbol for that as well. So I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can go with it. Going back to the horse about serving man as well. I mean, the actual character Rublev has this dilemma sort of halfway through the film, doesn't he? Where he up to the point where before they have the raid and kill everybody, he's very interested in serving people, isn't he? He's very interested. I mean, he didn't want to paint the Last Judgment Cathedral because he didn't want to scare people. He wanted to do, off. He wanted to do something. He was very kind of like, my work is for the people. I
actually have a theory about that. The not wanting to paint the hellfire, but continue. We'll get back to that.
And when that experience happens with the raid and everybody's dead and everything, he goes completely the other way and was like, well, I'm not going to paint at all. And takes the vow of silence. So he kind of goes from one, and he says something like, "Oh, they don't need it." So he was only ever thinking, as an artist, about what he could do for people. And maybe there's some that there maybe is, that kind of parallel with the horse as well, being in like constant servitude all the time. I don't know. It's again, you don't need to know. It's just that is the sort of the starting of the building blocks of his cinematic language, isn't it? Where you just
Yeah.
have these symbols that appear that are universal symbols that you can tag a lot to them. Nothing you don't there is no explanation. It's they're just vessels or symbols. Again, I would use that word a lot, but to just for things to be tagged to them, and you can kind of just sort of may freely associate a lot of things. But yeah, I think it is. There's such a big part of that film. I mean, it is crazy how often they do appear at such key moments as well. But anyway, we'll moving on from that.
That's that's actually. I mean, I did. Obviously, the final shot being a horse, I was like, oh yeah, that's. I wonder what Dan's going to say about that. And you've certainly brought it, mate. You've delivered on that. That's I'm with you there. I actually have a couple questions. Just I'd like to get out of the way. I don't know. I mean, these are more kind of boring, plotty questions, but just in case anyone is also confused by these things, I was confused by two things. I don't know if you have answers to these, but
yeah.
Number one, which I think is more important, is why does the guy, the drunkard from the beginning, who then sees Andrei at the end with the bell, say that Andrei sold him out? I mean, because when he arrives, like, I'm not 100% sure I understand. Because look, if I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of historical context to this film that I do not know, And I think it definitely would help if I knew a bit of Russian history. I mean, I know a little bit.
But I think this film was made. This is not I don't think this is a biopic as such, where it's historically accurate. I think there's been a lot of
but I do think
license that's been used.
Yeah, I do think it would help to know, though. Little bits of history.
But I don't think there's very much known about Andrei Rublev's life. I think a lot of this is all very, I mean, it is kind of fictional almost. I don't think there's anything remotely.
But I do think there's historical context to it. At the beginning, they go to this little sort of shack, and there are these, people hanging out, and there's this drunk guy who's entertaining everyone. And then, they kind of they're taking shelter from the storm, and then some other riders come up and take him out, and smack his head against the tree, and then chuck him over the back of another horse. And then we don't see him for, 16 hours. And then you're at the end of the movie, and he's like, oh, Andrei, sold me out, and I was in the hole for 10 years because of this guy. Maybe you don't have an answer to that, but I didn't really understand why he felt Andrei had sold him out.
Yeah.
I mean, did those guys who came to that shack afterwards and then took him away to the hole?
Well, it's kind of
who the fuck were they?
Well, it was what's it called? Kirill.
Cyril.
The guy who kills
the guy
the
who
dog.
looks a bit like what's his name? Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
He does look like Liam Neeson.
The jealous one who's who's
the talentless fuck.
Yeah.
let's call him that.
He
much like Liam Neeson, actually.
He actually went out and did it, which obviously became. He comes when they arrive to take this guy away. He comes in shortly afterwards, so that he'd as a.
So was he saying, "Oh, this guy's sinning, like he's drinking, he's a drunk"?
Yeah, because he says something like,
away.
amongst like God's work, a buffoon is the devil's work. So he's kind of gone out, found some guards to come and get him, and then like years and years later, this mistaken identity with Andrei Rublev sort of occurs. I think it's more just to kind of illustrate it's at this point you're kind of just witnessing just how crazy the world is that he's sort of living in, I suppose. That's how I see it. It's almost just sort of compounding things, and how this person can like sort of recognize him and try and kill him was just one of the many crazy things that could happen. But I don't know. I don't know. There's something. It's a good question, to be honest, because it's obviously very deliberate.
I was just confused by it. Yeah, I was actively confused, and I wasn't really. I didn't really know.
I feel it. I don't feel confused. I just kind of feel that it's all just kind of fitting together in some sort of strange way. I mean, the actual chapter was called "The Buffoon," wasn't it? So it was sort of a fable, or if you like, about the buffoon or his character in terms of where that his position sort of lies in the whole story. I don't know. It's a good question, but
so okay. Well, I got another one for you. So why? And this is much more kind of up to. I don't think there's like a definitive answer. It's not so much a plot question as it is a kind of talking point. Why do you think I'm? By the way, the bell maker.
Yeah.
Was that? I should probably check. I should have checked this before. But the kid who makes the bell, is he, Ivan?
I think so. Yeah, I'm very sure.
Because he looks like him. He looks like a grown-up Ivan to me.
Yeah.
Oh, he is. I've just checked it. Yeah, he is. Yeah, Nikolai Burlayev. Burlayev or something.
Yeah,
sorry about that. Yeah. So why do you think he makes the bell? Two-part question. Why do you think he makes the bell? Is it simply to escape? And number two, why is he so bummed out at the end that his father didn't actually give him the secret and he'd actually lied to the guys who commissioned him to make the bell about his father giving him the secret? I think that's kind of a nice... I mean, I have some ideas myself, but I really like the scene where they come across Ivan, where he's like, no, yeah, my sister's died of plague, mum's died of plague, dad's died of plague, and he's like, what about your neighbor? He's like, died of plague. And so it's like, you can see, you'd be like, well, anything to get at it, just sitting here and like, who knows how long this kid has been there, just sort of killing chickens and getting on with life.
Yeah,
but then he's so heartbroken when the bell eventually rings, and Rublev himself is so moved, I think, by Ivan and the bell that he's like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna paint again.
Yeah. It's such a great moment in the film, isn't it?
It is.
That's because that is the moment where obviously he ends his vow of silence as well.
He just starts consoling him just straight away.
Yeah, it's very that's such a powerful moment in the film. Like I just feel that every time.
Well, he wanted to spread as much love as possible. Like that's what he was saying at the beginning, and that's why the whole not wanting to paint the hellfire. He's like, I don't want to do it with fear. I want to move people with love, not fear. And the idea of fear and faith being so connected, especially in the sort of pagan sort of vibe, like where it's like you got to be afraid of the fire and brimstone to really believe. And I don't think Tarkovsky. Well, what's interesting is
I think faith has a lot to do with the answer of the question. I think
right.
So he had faith that he had the secret. He was convinced that his dad had given him the secret. So therefore, he had. There is kind of he had that essence of faith, and
he had faith that he could make a bell and do it without actually having the secret, that he could pull it off. And look, he made the bell.
Did he know if he had the secret? Yeah, but why did he? But maybe it wasn't sounding the way that it was supposed to sound. That's how I interpret it.
Oh,
it's like
wow!
He made the bell, but it's not
quite good enough.
It's not how his dad did it, So.
Oh my God! You've just done it, mate. You've just done it. Tarkovsky's dad was. Oh my God! That's it. You fucking dirty bastard. That's it. Tarkovsky's dad was a poet, and he's like, yeah, it's not as good. My work isn't as good as my father's, and he never gave me the secret to making that. He reads his dad's poetry, and he reads his poetry in his own films. He reads his dad's poetry a lot.
Yeah, in Mirror, he references dad's poetry in Mirror, because the poetry that nostalgia. Yeah, that's right.
And Rublev is saying, like, don't worry, man, your films are making people happy. And he's like, yeah, but they're not good enough. Like, I'm a fucking perfectionist. I'm a lunatic. They need to be, my dad had set a fucking standard. And like, when I read my dad's poetry, I am moved. I would say,
I mean, you can speculate on whether it's it's Andrei Tarkovsky talking about himself through his characters. I think that's very possible because, he obviously goes on to do that more and more, I think, especially Mirror. So
my favorite
I wouldn't be
Tarkovsky, by the way.
See, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This film is at the beginning of a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's that's why it's kind of interesting, because you can then just sort of start creating these kind of links. That's like you've got that from it, and I think that's perfectly valid reading. But I think in terms of the characters in the film, Rublev, there is a line, where there is a kind of something to do with fatherless children in the cathedral scene where he's talking to his mentor again. There is there's an actual reference to a line, being a father for fatherless children. And I think Andrei Rublev at that moment in time, his faith was completely shattered. And I think after the bell was made, to everybody else, it seems like a perfectly good accomplishment. But this kid's faith has been shattered because it's not how his dad hadn't given him the secret to make the bells like he had.
Yeah.
So and that's where Rublev sees his purpose again to come in and
love.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he kind of maybe just at that point through the lens of this person sees the bigger picture. Well, it kind of goes back to the art again. I mean that's really what this film's sort of about. It's about dissolve himself in his work, give himself entirely. Maybe that was part of that process for for his character to then go through all what he did, and then was able to come back and look at things from that fresh perspective. Maybe was like the key.
Yeah.
But this is very, as I said before, I think this is all very much, Tarkovsky's ideas. It's very, I mean, and to say there must be a lot of himself and his own ideas into it, because I don't think there's very much known about the actual real person. So there is huge poetic license going on here. You don't ever want to be too fixed on one meaning, but that's what makes him so good to talk about, because there is so much mystery and there is so many ways you can interpret it, and you just having that there is something that I actually like. You talking about him and his dad is something that I'd never thought about before. I'd never
well, I do think his dad kind of looms large over his work. I think even he would admit that. But there's a good line there where that's kind of feeding into this that I'm reminded of. I actually took a note of it, is when he's telling I think it's Cyril that he's like, oh, listen, man, I'm gonna just shut my mouth and I'm not gonna paint, like, fuck it. And he says, I've worked for humans, all of this time. And he's like, he doesn't want to work for humans anymore. And he wants to work. I mean, I'm taking that as him saying he wants to work. He wants to work for God. I mean, he doesn't want it, like, the fact that, okay, I'm painting these churches for God, in inverted commas, but really I'm painting them for these rich dudes who are actually, who are building these churches, and they want me to paint them for them. And some of them, I don't particularly even like them, the people I'm working for. And then it gets worse and worse. They're actually destroying the things I like, and I'm still having to sort of work for them. And it's like, there could be a sort of connection there. Although this is just his second film. But well, it's not actually. I mean, he did make a lot of short films and make a lot of experimental shit. But there could be a kind of connection there between, you're working in this idea of like Rublev wanting to work for God and purely being Tarkovsky wanting to work like, to use Lynch as a way, like just to serve the idea, staying true to the idea. But the fact is, you're beholden, because movies cost money. You're beholden to patrons, to bigger folks who you don't necessarily agree with or like, but they are the ones paying you to make this shit. And so you're kind of having to express yourself within that. And it's like Rublev going, no, I'm not even going to fucking paint, like it's not worth it, is the equivalent of a filmmaker going, well, look, I'm not, if I can't work within the studio system, so fuck it. Lucas going, I'm gonna make my little movies for myself and my family. It's that, like, just to poke another, little dig at Lucas. You know what I mean? That could be a feeling, although it seems a little bit early for Tarkovsky to be feeling that way. But maybe not, because it's like you said, his film is being cut. I mean, this film has 3 separate releases or cuts.
Yeah,
there's a 114-minute version. There's the 3 hours 3-minute version, which I watched just simply because it looks so much better. It's such a better restoration. And then there's the 3 hour 25-minute version, which I don't actually think I've ever seen, I have to admit.
No, I wonder what.
And that would break his fucking heart. That would break the man's heart. That we haven't seen that. But it is so grainy. The only version I can get my hands on. But so I don't know. I mean, with making art, you're always beholden onto someone else.
Yeah, I think. I mean, that's again perfectly valid reading. I think I tend to think with Tarkovsky, as you said before, like he is so hardcore in a way in terms of how he kind of sees what he's doing. I mean, he's so earnest and so, diehard, if you like, and committed, like fully dedicated. I think he's actually really asking a lot in this film. Like, what is the purpose of art in a world that's just gone mad, a crazy world where you spend all this time making this work for it just to get sort of burnt down. People, I think, do you know what I mean? I think he's more kind of how does like an artist reconcile that this kind of like holy pursuit, isn't it? Like where he's trying to like uncover like truth, and it's all very, it's, I mean, it is very serious.
Yeah.
This character sort of what he goes through in this film and how he discovers himself as an artist is a lot to do with, these huge themes like, reconciling himself before God and like, and people, and the madness of the world and why continue to do what he's doing. And when you are like putting all this work into films like Andrei Rublev, where there's so much work that's gone into it, collaborating intensely with people, spending a lot of money, I think he prefers to make statements that are more on that kind of scale. And maybe, I don't know, I think he kind of does just continue in that vein. And you haven't watched The Sacrifice yet, but he's like, by this time he knows he's dying, he's got cancer, he knows this is going to be his last film. But what does he decide to do a film about? It's about a guy who's very dissatisfied with the world. He's convinced that mankind has gone on he's on the wrong track, and it has gone too far down the wrong track, which is different because chronologically Andrei Rublev is obviously way before. We're talking about an inherited future which is pretty much present day, and he has the whole thing about the sacrifice is just to, in the character's story, he kind of makes a promise to God, and kind of gets a second chance at things. But the way I see it is the themes have gone and traveled all the way through and gone right up to the end of his last film.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about the sacrifice, and I mean, keep going back to this quote again. It's all about self-sacrifice, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
The man flew, and for that he sacrificed his life. It's a different kind of sacrifice. At the end, in it, in the sacrifice, it's a very different kind of sacrifice.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. You can't help but feel like there is that worldview of, whether he serving people or serving God. I think probably not a question most people would ask themselves as an artist. Without people wouldn't probably have much need to ask that, but I think Tarkovsky's definitely asking himself that. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna be somewhat of a cunt here. Just a little bit devil's advocate, but so last week we were talking about RoboCop, and we were talking about how fucking awesome it is that Verhoeven managed to make this film with all of these heady concepts and pretty biting commentary, and also package it in a delicious tight narrative. Yeah. I would not describe Tarkovsky as accessible.
No, it's
I'd say he is making films for God. I mean, he's not making films for the people, in quotes. I mean, the people ain't going to see Rublev. Your average guy out there probably isn't that interested in it.
But the people. See, that's another matter entirely. That debate of accessibility and who you were deciding to reach and how you were going to do it is quite a big debate. Whereas in the case of Tarkovsky, I think he was a religious man. I think deeply religious man. So yeah, I think he was more. I think the dilemma that Rublev has in this film is pretty reflective of it. Maybe the dilemma Tarkovsky had, and I think maybe he kind of maybe even reached the same conclusion where he was just making films for God, and for people. I'm sure as well.
Well, thank God he made films. To be honest with you, because we get to sit down and watch them.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're not for everyone.
I think when you do kind of go and look through what he was doing as well, it's like he had a kind of some crazy motivation behind what he was doing, which could only kind of come from really kind of like deep spiritual convictions, because he was wedded to it, like totally wedded to it.
There you go. Yeah. He was holy matrimony with the work.
Yeah.
So there's also another good line I'd like to bring up. I mean, we've done quite well already. But I would like to. There isn't a really good line where I think it's Cyril says, "Yeah, listen, Rublev. God will forgive you for fucking up. Like you don't need to you don't need to be silent for the rest of your life and never paint again. God will forgive you. Just don't forgive yourself." And you got to live between forgiveness and torment. I mean, this is a thing with. I think that speaks for itself. That line. I just wanted to say it out loud. Such a great line. I mean, there you go. I mean, there's not much to unpack there. It's just it's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of it's just kind of perfectly describes what the character kind of goes on to do as well. Yeah.
Okay, Rain.
Yeah.
You got anything on the Rain? Because you brought the heat with the horses, and Rain seems to come at very specific times and almost come as like a like a light turns on, and it's like and rain.
Yeah.
And it's and obviously Rain comes from above. To put it plainly. Another thing I would like to just, and I think this may roll in to the rain thing, is crane shots from above that are, number one, this is a 66 movie. I don't know how big the crane was that was used to shoot this, but I can only imagine what kind of a monster
the real one
this piece of machinery was.
Yeah.
But what they reminded me of, and one shot in particular, is almost too close to not be. Well, look, I'm not going to say it's like Tarkovsky's actively referencing Hitchcock, but there is a shot from above, down, looking down at the world.
Yeah, with the bird. You're talking about the birds.
Two birds in the foreground. There are the birds in the foreground.
Yeah.
A really elaborate matte painting shot where you have this god's eye view. A lot of people would say it was when writing about that shot would describe it as the bird's point of view, but Hitchcock always described it as God's point of view. And where you have the birds in the foreground flying over Bodega Bay as the car the explosion at the gas station's just happened. So that's a pretty important shot in cinema history, and also just in a pretty important moment. And there's almost an identical shot in this film, shot only a few years after The Birds came out. But I'm not saying, Tarkovsky watched The Birds and then recreated that shot. I am just pointing it out because, that's where my brain went when I saw that shot.
The way I think about that, and it's just my opinion, that if he is referencing Hitchcock, it'll be something along the lines of how Solaris was supposed to be a reaction to Space Odyssey 2001. He's seeing it, but he's thinking, like I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it properly, sort of thing. Yeah. So if he is, referencing Hitchcock, I think he's doing it with that kind of attitude. I don't think he's paying homage. Because I think this guy already thinks he's better than everyone. Well, yeah, and you know what? I'm not going to argue with him. Yeah, so he's kind of like, I'll give you a proper God's eye view shot, like over like this epic medieval battle, that kind of thing. So if he is, which obviously no, we can never be too sure. I mean,
we can never know.
His quotes about Space Odyssey is obviously a lot more well documented. But if that's anything to go from, and he is referencing sort of, and it is very classic Western cinema, you'd almost be surprised if he wasn't aware of it.
Well, I don't. This is the thing. I just don't know.
Certainly not paying homage.
I'm probably with you there. Yeah, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who would be like, oh, I'm gonna reference this shot with my shot because I like that shot. It's like,
yeah, I think he's more kind of like, he would be more critical of how Hitchcock has actually used that shot and has decided to insert it into Rublev to kind of show how much better it could be used in terms of how the overall symbolism of that God's eye view, and how that all kind of fits in with the narrative structure of his film and everything. Just like that, he's like the deepest, most difficult questions that we face as human beings, and that it's all throughout his work, and he's trying to do that. He's not shying away from these challenges. So
yeah, rain. You'll see shots of vines underwater. You'll see shots of a glass being filled up by rain overflowing. These things appear and they reappear. The shots of
it's a language,
vines.
Isn't it? There's so I think he's interested in how time flows through things. I think rain is flowing water. All these things, they're actual visual symbols of the passing of time.
Yeah,
and that's what the cup filling up. It brings to mind in Stalker as well, when the camera's moving through all these kind of rusted objects.
Yeah,
that's how I see the rain. And I think that's kind of like the nice maybe you can combine the horses, and I mean, because the last shot is horses now,
Horses
obviously
in
now
rain.
in color in the rain.
Discarded, left to the rain.
Yeah, I don't know. The horses are the kind of the big question mark, the real intrigue, mysterious intrigue.
Yep.
That's just like classic Tarkovsky.
Just a quick thought.
Mm-hmm.
The way Christianity has been moving in our world is that they kind of moved away from a lot of the fire and brimstone stuff. I mean, I know that back in the 40s and 50s and shit, it was a lot more, you'd go to Sunday school and they would really tell you like, hey, listen, Satan was going to take your soul, you're going to go down to hell, you're going to burn. I know there are some branches of Christianity that still do teach the fire and brimstone stuff, but I know that's becoming way more out of fashion as time has gone on. I even think by the time the 50s rolled around, it was starting to get out of fashion. I mean, and you have the Louvin brothers reminding us that Satan is in fact real. I had to get that one in the mid 50s. So and I think that song kind of, if you haven't heard that song, check it out, listeners. I think that kind of is basically a reaction to the fact that we're not teaching the kids about Satan anymore, and they need to know that Satan is real. And I don't know, Rublev saying, hey, listen, I don't want to do this whole Satan thing. I think it should be led by love and not fear.
Yeah.
I think is kind of an interesting, because I'm kind of, I love the Louvin brothers, but I'm kind of more in line with the whole lead with love and not fear thing.
Yeah, well, I think this has sort of come after that part with the whole paganism kind of where they're all running around naked and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's such an interesting scene where he kind of wakes up the next day and like everyone is sort of like lying around naked sleeping, and there's like this old lady who's kind of comes in and does like a portrait of this old lady who's crying.
Yeah.
And then he kind of does that kind of talk about growing old, and sort of talks kind of quite poetically about that, and then he has that lovely shot of that like that boat that just sort of like taps the side of the other boat before then sort of kind of drifting on. Do you not think there's something kind of important there that sort of then that kind of like in his character development that then sort of takes him forward? He's he was always sort of criticized because when he was kind of chastising those people, saying that there's going to be a thunder that comes, like a fire that comes down, and he was kind of using that rhetoric, wasn't he? And they kind of just sort of like disarmed him.
You're right.
They just sort of like hushed him basically.
Yeah.
So we can't be forced to join your religion.
He gets his sort of philosophy of using love from the witches, because she says love, and then she kind of forces a kiss on him when he's tied up.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are they witches? I don't know.
Well,
he's kind of got that whole atmosphere of a witching hour, but they're basically like pagans, though, aren't they? So that's.
I don't mean like actual on a broom witches. I mean witches in Rublev's eyes, like heathens.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're kind of like, theologically speaking, probably like the polar opposite to him. Whereas yet he maybe takes something from all of that, and then the whole thing about when one of his like assistants, who's the younger kid, reading out from any spot of the Bible, and he's talking about like women wearing head coverings and being like they sin if they're if they're not praying with a head covering on, and he kind of just like finds that ridiculous as well. It's kind of just like, I don't know, it's maybe just it's kind of just showing him his development as sort of his vision just sort of becoming more clear, I guess, in terms of
slowly just learning along the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the final point I also had was when he says I think this is Rublev, or it might be Cyril actually who says this. It's at the beginning when he says that the monastery is looking like a marketplace. Do you remember who says that line? Do you remember that line?
Krillin.
Right.
Is it Kirillin? I've forgotten the character's name.
I think it's
Cyril.
Cyril. Well, Cyril. Cyril. So Cyril.
Kirill, is it?
Kirill. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Florian.
When he gets humiliated, although nobody else knows he feels humiliated because he was the one who was supposed to be summoned.
Yeah.
And then he kind of has that, and he has that big rant and leaves, and then he like murders his dog.
Yeah.
And then it's like, but that's what kind of makes it quite biblical, though, isn't it? Because it's like, as you were saying before, because it is just like a parable out of the Bible. Like later, he's like begging to come back, isn't he?
Yeah.
And has to like copy out the Bible like 15 times as penance.
Yeah.
That's where that scene is. I think is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, I just thought saying that the monastery looks like a marketplace. Number one, it's a nice turn of phrase, and number two, it's a kind of a sort of a nice.
Well, that's from the Bible. That's when Jesus goes into the temple and they're all like selling stuff, and he kind of trashes it.
Oh, does he? Nice.
Yeah.
Good old
so
Jesus.
That's a kind of one of the sort of things from the New Testament, which it's kind of that kind of reference to that, I think.
It's such an epic film, and I mean, have you seen Kagemusha?
No.
It's a late Kurosawa. I think it's 1980.
I need to kind of. I haven't
brush up on your Kuro.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could do it here on Screen Dreams. Do a couple Kuros.
I mean, it says Seven Samurai is Kurosawa, isn't it?
Yep.
So yeah, I think that might be the only film I've seen of his.
Oh well, there's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Kagemusha is a very, it's very, as I say, it's late, it's 80s, but there are these fucking battle scenes in Kagemusha with 3,000 extras, and they're famous for being these huge sequences. And Andrei Rublev, man, felt every bit as big as Kagemusha. Just like the gritty, the grain, the fact that like early on there's that shot with just so many horses, where they're on either side of the river. And like you're like, okay, well, there's a bunch of horses in the foreground and there's a bunch of horses across the river, and they're like, wait a minute, there's even more horses even in the distance there. That's all horses. It's very epic. It's a huge. I mean, in terms of his work, I think this one stands alone.
Yeah, in terms of production, it's probably his biggest production, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it must be.
So
I mean, I haven't seen The Sacrifice, but yeah, I would imagine.
No, Sacrifice is nowhere near as big. It's kind of more,
quite small.
So that's, and I think he wanted to create that. He wanted to recreate that world, and I think that was kind of the reason why he got to make the film. Was part of the reason, was because he sort of set out to do that, and that's how he was able to get the money for it and everything like that. So, but yeah, I mean, what a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does stand alone because he kind of just closes the book on it as well. He's like, okay, don't need to do one of them again, another historical epic. I mean,
yeah, don't need to do one of them. Pretty much nailed that.
So now I can go to pastures new and and
that's the thing. His work is all so very different. I mean, he did quite a few, and I'd hesitate to say sci-fi, but like, kind of like interesting, kind of like out there surreal concepts. Like I do think there's a lot more in common between a lot of his later work.
Stalker's referred to as a sci-fi, but I mean,
it's not, is it?
Come on, it has minor science fiction elements to it. It can't be. I mean, Solaris, granted, that is a sci-fi film. I mean, it's based on a space, but Stalker, I think, if you're going to call it a sci-fi film, I wouldn't agree with that.
I don't. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think the problem with calling Stalker, you can't really call Stalker anything. That's the thing. It's so genre. It's not really a genre. Like it's.
Yeah, it's out on its own.
He does pull this a very similar trick in Stalker actually when they're all on the little like Indiana Jones Temple of Doom mine cart.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like going into the zone, and then suddenly it just cuts to color. That's a pretty powerful moment, and you're in the zone, and now it's
when
all
they're
in
the
color.
zone, yeah.
He does do the old hit you with a cut to color.
Yeah,
trick
well,
again.
again. Well, you know, that's just another way that you've kind of referenced it. His sort of language going forward. There, he uses it in a very meaningful way. So
Yeah.
it's no, I think that's a good point. I mean, I just think the actual shot, like the actual bell sequence and how that is shot, and
Yeah.
how there's that shot of like when they finally pour all the mold in, all like the molten stuff, and like the smoke's coming up behind his like behind his head, as if he's kind of whilst he's kind of wishing for it to work. Like there's something sort of like magic going on there that yeah, it's just beyond words. Like just how beautiful it gets sometimes.
That sequence is so good, and when you know what? Oh my god, we got another little father bit when he decides he's like, that guy's not doing the work correctly, and he's like, go beat him, and then the other worker says like, your father didn't treat us like this. He didn't, like, the people working for him weren't so depressed, and like didn't also get radioactive poisoning. Take it easy, Tarkovsky, you fucking lunatic. There might be an element of that, I've paid in blood but not my own sort of thing. But that bell sequence, I don't quite understand, just from a technical standpoint, how that bell mold worked, because they show you them building the mold, right? But they never show you the first stage, i.e. the concave interior. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
Yeah, they make the mold out of clay.
Yeah,
and then
but you never see him like doing.
You don't see the craftsmanship of the mold, do you? Really, you just.
I wish you saw. I wish you got one shot of a guy pressing a horse shape into the clay.
Yeah, see, that's
I really
kind
would
of
have liked
what
that.
you don't get, isn't it? All that kind of part of where they're doing the mold, they're already kind of doing the outer layer with like the twining and everything like that, and then they bake it in the big fire.
By the way, dude, what is on the fucking bell? A man on a horse.
Oh no way! Are you sure?
Lovely. Yeah, it's a man on a horse.
Yeah.
I just put that together just now. That is literally the image on the bell.
Yeah. Oh, there's something there's definitely something going on there.
Yeah, for sure. Bell sequence, it's got to be up there. Top sequences of all time.
It's just such a joy to watch, and. Just it's interesting just to see like what they're doing and how they're doing it, let alone whatever kind of narrative purposes it serves. Yeah, it's just beautiful just to watch in it all in itself. So you're onto a winner there, aren't you? If that's
to be honest with you, as is the whole film. It is beautiful to watch, even if you don't really understand the metaphorical implications of it. It is, the cinematography is, I would say, good enough to hold you over the 3-hour runtime.
Yeah, I think it's a film. A lot of epics don't pay off. I mean, I think you could. I think Lawrence of Arabia is a pretty good comparison, actually.
I knew that was coming. That was about to come out of your mouth.
Yeah, but like I just feel like the best of that film is. About like in
20
the
minutes.
In the first half,
Well, maybe we could do that at one point. And not soon, but
I'm never watching that film again. It's not that I didn't like it. I just
wow.
I'm not
like okay.
Well, I would. I'd consider doing it. I would, but
doing it on Screen Dreams. Come on now.
Yeah, but I'm just it would. I did. That was see, Rublev doesn't feel like that to me. Rublev feels like there's like this momentum that kind of builds up, and there's a payoff at the end.
Yeah.
And to have all those parts, all those working parts, and put them together like that in that way is just genius. I mean,
masterful.
Yeah. Not bad for a second film, eh?
Not bad at all. Thanks for listening to Screen Dreams. We'll be back again next week talking about the 2018 Coen Brothers film, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.